Everyone talks about the scapegoat, the child who was blamed, targeted, made to carry the family's dysfunction. And that child suffered visibly, undeniably. But there is another child in the same family who suffered just as deeply and was never recognized as suffering at all. Because their suffering looked like success. The good child, the golden child, the one who got the praise, the approval, the warmth, the one everyone assumed was fine because they performed so well. But the golden child wasn't spared the dysfunction. They were managed by it differently. The scapegoat was controlled through blame. The golden child was controlled through approval. And approval, when it's conditional, is just a quieter cage. In this video, we go deep into one role, the golden child, and trace it through 3 layers. The root, what actually happened in childhood, and 3 echoes that follow into adulthood, perfectionism, burnout, and the identity void. Because the good child's question is not, why did they treat me badly? It's far harder than that. It's, if everything looked fine, why do I feel so empty? Let's start with the lie. The golden child was loved more. They weren't. They were managed more quietly. The love the golden child received was conditional, performance-based, and revocable. It looked like love. It felt like love. But it had a clause. Keep performing. The golden child learned the rules early. Be excellent. Be easy. Reflect well on the family. Don't have needs that are inconvenient. Don't have feelings that complicate the narrative. Be the evidence that the family is working. And in exchange for this performance, the golden child received approval, warmth, the preferred position, the illusion of being loved. But the transaction had a cost the child couldn't see at the time, the self. Every performance replaced a genuine expression. Every achievement answered the family's need, not the child's. Every moment of approval landed on the performance, not on the person. And over years, the child behind the performance became faint. And the child consented to this. Not because they understood the transaction, because the alternative was visible across the dinner table, the scapegoat. The golden child saw what happened to the child who didn't perform, the blame, the targeting, the exclusion, and the golden child's calculation made before they could articulate it, I will perform. Because the alternative is that, and the performance, however hollow, was safer than the truth. And over time, the child behind the performance became faint. Not absent. Faint. Still there. But so quiet, so unused, so unpracticed that the golden child eventually couldn't distinguish between who they actually were and who they had learned to be. This is the root. Not abuse, not neglect. Something harder to name. The systematic replacement of the self with a performance that the family needed, and the child was rewarded for delivering. The golden cage. Warm, praised, and completely hollow at the center. And the most insidious part, the golden child cannot name this as harm. Because the harm came wrapped in warmth. It arrived as praise, as approval, as being chosen. How do you call something harmful when it looked like love? How do you tell someone, my parents praised me too much, and expect to be taken seriously? The golden child's wound has no vocabulary because the culture has no category for damage that arrives through approval. Damage is supposed to look like criticism, neglect, cruelty, not warmth that came with conditions, not love that required a performance to activate. The first echo. The performance didn't stop when the golden child left home. It followed. Into school, into work, into every relationship and achievement. Because the system learned, I am valued when I perform. I am invisible when I simply exist. And the logical conclusion, never stop performing. The golden child's perfectionism is not about high standards. It's about survival. The perfect grade is not pursued for knowledge. It's pursued because anything less than perfect triggers the old alarm. If I'm not excellent, I'm not loved. The flawless presentation at work is not about professional pride. It's about the visceral terror that a visible mistake will reveal the person behind the performance. And that person, the golden child believes, is not enough. And the cruelest feature of the golden child's perfectionism, it works in the short term. The grades are excellent, the career advances, the external life looks enviable, and every success reinforces the original lesson. The performance is what earns love. Without it, you're nothing. The perfectionism feeds itself. The better the performance, the more dependent the identity becomes on performing, and the trap tightens. And there's a specific moment the golden child knows well, the moment after the achievement. The award ceremony is over. The promotion is announced. The performance is complete. And in the silence that follows, instead of satisfaction, there is a flatness, a nothing. The achievement landed, and the person behind it felt nothing, because the achievement went to the performance, not to the self. The self was never part of the transaction, and the golden child sits in the aftermath of success wondering, why doesn't this feel like anything? And the answer they don't have yet, because the thing that was praised was never you. The second echo. The performance cannot be maintained forever. The human body and mind were not designed to operate at maximum output indefinitely, but the golden child system has no permission to stop. Rest was never modeled as safe. Pausing was never rewarded. Existing without producing was never validated. So the system runs until it breaks. The golden child's burnout is different from ordinary burnout. Ordinary burnout says, I'm tired of this work. The golden child's burnout says, I'm tired of being this person. The exhaustion isn't from the tasks, it's from the performance underneath the tasks. The constant monitoring, am I good enough? Am I maintaining the standard? Has anyone noticed a crack? The energy expenditure is not in the doing, it's in the maintaining of the image while doing. And when the burnout arrives, the golden child faces a terror. The scapegoat never does. If I stop, what's left? The scapegoat always knew they were more than the role. The golden child built their entire identity around it. Stopping the performance doesn't feel like rest. It feels like death. Not physical death, identity death. The end of the only version of themselves that anyone ever loved. And this is why golden children often have their crisis later than scapegoats. The scapegoat hits their crisis early because the pain was visible and undeniable. The golden child hits theirs at 35, 40, 45, when the performance finally cannot be maintained and the person underneath has to surface. And that person is a stranger who has been living inside the performance for decades, waiting to be discovered, growing increasingly desperate to be seen as something other than the achievement. The burnout is not the crisis. The burnout is the doorway to the crisis. The crisis is, I don't know who I am without this. The third echo, the deepest, after the perfectionism, after the burnout. There is a quiet room, and in the quiet room, the golden child sits with a question they have never been equipped to answer. Who am I without the performance? Not who do people want me to be? Not what am I good at? Not what role do I serve? Who am I? What do I want? What do I enjoy? Not because it impresses anyone, but because it genuinely brings me joy? What would I choose if nobody was watching and no approval was at stake? The golden child often cannot answer these questions, not because they're not intelligent or reflective, because the self that would answer was never developed. It was replaced so early and so completely by the performing self that the actual self, the one with genuine preferences, authentic desires, real personality traits, remained in draft form. Unpracticed, unexplored, alive but unfinished. And this is why the golden child often suffers the most. The scapegoat knows they were mistreated. The golden child doesn't know what happened to them. Their suffering has no name. Everyone tells them they had it good, and from the outside they did. The grades, the approval, the career. But inside, where the self should be, there is a performance where a person used to live. And the emptiness of that, the specific, unnamed, invisible emptiness of having been praised into disappearance, is one of the loneliest experiences a human being can have. Because how do you grieve what you never had when everyone insists you had everything? And this is the golden child's specific form of loneliness, being surrounded by people who envy your life while you are drowning in it. The colleague who says, "I wish I had your discipline." The friend who says, "You have it all together." The partner who says, "I don't understand what you're unhappy about." Every compliment is a reminder that nobody sees the cage, because the cage is made of gold, and nobody looks at gold and thinks, prison. The root, conditional approval replacing the self with a performance. Echo 1, perfectionism that feeds itself. The better the performance, the tighter the cage. Echo 2, burnout that isn't about being tired of work, but tired of being this person. Echo 3, the identity void, a performance where a person used to live. If you recognized yourself in this, the most important thing to hear is your suffering is real. It doesn't need to look like the scapegoat suffering to count. The golden cage is still a cage, and the fact that nobody saw it as one doesn't mean you weren't trapped. The way out is not to perform better or to stop performing entirely. It's to start asking the questions the role never let you ask. What do I actually want? What genuinely brings me joy? Who am I when nobody is evaluating? These questions will feel strange at first, like trying to use a muscle that was never exercised. But the muscle exists. It's been there the whole time. Waiting. And the first genuine preference you discover, the first time you choose something not because it's impressive, but because it's yours, is the beginning of meeting the person the performance replaced. That person is quieter than the golden child, less polished, less certain, but real. And real, after decades of performance, is the most radical thing you can be. If you're tracking the difference between performing and choosing, our Inner Lens Healing Tracker, exclusive for members, includes a section for separating things I do for approval from things I do because they're mine. The distinction on paper changes everything. Join using the join button below. At Inner Lens, we see the suffering that looks like success. If this video spoke to you, stay. There is room here for the good child too.